God.
The time has come. Superman and Lois, the final CW superhero show, is here with its final season. And it's kind of depressing. The first two episodes were fantastic. Like, they had a lot of great emotional scenes dealing with the death of Superman and just had the family really reacting to what happened to Clark. And it was all done super well. Lex Luthor is more menacing than ever. He is a great villain, and I love what they're doing with him in this series. However, I will say the only downside to these two episodes is that you can really tell they cut the cast, because it really feels empty in some of the scenes. There is literally a scene with Sarah and Lana talking, and it feels like they're missing the younger daughter. It just feels like they're missing characters that need to be in these scenes. Even not having Chrissy at the Gazette feels weird. Plus, on top of it, we don't see John Henry Irons at all during these two episodes, and he was cut. However, he is in the next episode because of the trailer, so at least he's not gone for good. Based on them cutting the show, though, it does make me fear they might die next episode. But nonetheless, this episode was fantastic. The CG was a little questionable at times, but it's a CW and I kind of expect that from them. But overall, everything else was awesome. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the episode, talking about some of the details you may have missed, breaking down what happened during it, some comic book characters that showed up, as well as how it relates to the death of Superman and the reign of the Supermen. So with that, let's start with episode 1. Picking back up where we left off last season with Superman and Doomsday going fist to fist in space, which looked awesome. I love the added scenes to it, but Superman is just getting wrecked. And we know with how Doomsday works, Superman was not getting out of that alive, but it was awesome to watch him go toe to toe. I kind of wish there was a little bit more scenes with him, maybe more talking rather than just silence, but it was awesome to see him go fist to fist with Doomsday himself. And even picking back up with the kids at the farm, cleaning up the mess of the barn being on fire, and all of them learning that Luthor is to blame. And that they have Sam Lane. Again, picking up after last season, pretty much all the unsolved stuff that we never dealt with because they left on a cliffhanger, now we're all picking up. Which is why it's a good thing this got one final season to wrap up all these plot points than just ending it on a question. But it's really interesting to see that Luthor is staying in Smallville at this point. He wants to watch over the Kents. He's not really giving a crap about his own corporation, even though the corporation wants him back. But it's all in the plan to mess with the Kents. And also, he's trying to find his daughter, Elizabeth. And we know in the comics and from Supergirl, he has a sister named Lena Luthor, but he doesn't have a daughter. So it's going to be interesting to see the new twist of him having a kid, where we're going to have Lex Luthor dealing with his child who has left him, wants nothing to do with him because of Lois Lane. And then you have on the other side of things, Lois with her boys. And I feel like at some point we're going to see Jordan and Jonathan meet Elizabeth Luthor, and I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what's going on with those characters, because she doesn't seem evil, she doesn't seem bad, she wants to stay away from all that, but there could be a big twist coming along, which she could turn into one of the bigger bads, and that would be interesting, more of a villain for Jordan to go against as Superboy. And in this scene too, while we're seeing Lex Luthor talk about Elizabeth, he meets with Amanda McCoy, and Amanda McCoy in the comics is a scientist that worked at LexCorp. However, it doesn't look like she's a scientist in this, but in the comics as well, she was a person that put together that Clark Kent and Superman were the same person, but Lex didn't believe her. And the whole episode too, before they revealed that Clark was dead and that he was taken out by Doomsday, they had Jordan scared about his dad not making it back because he saw the fear on his father's face when Doomsday landed in town, really showing how much of a danger Doomsday is. Even Lois trying to call out to Clark using the device, trying to find out if her husband's still alive while he's fighting Doomsday, which Doomsday in this moment while they're fighting in space looks more like that classic Doomsday from the comic for a second, and I thought that was pretty cool. Just a nice little homage to that, even though this is not exactly the same kind of Doomsday we're used to. And it was interesting to see Lex Luthor in this episode as well show up at the Gazette, confronting Lois about not following his rules and retiring. He literally bought the hotel across the street so that he can keep an eye on her so they can know exactly what she's up to and make her fear him, which we know is not like Lois. Even though Lex wants his revenge for him being sent to prison and having his daughter turned against him, it's not going to stop Lois from going against him. But it was great to see in this episode, while they were jumping back and forth between the different plot points, what was going on with Sam. Because this dude was getting a beating. First of all, he tries to reason with his captor, Gretchen, who doesn't actually seem all bad. She looks like she's actually being held by Luthor. She can't betray him. She doesn't actually want to be doing everything, but she has no way out, which is really interesting to see what's kind of going on. However, Lex Luthor still orders his death, which I do love how Sam says he has 3 grandchildren. Accepting Natalie as one of his own. We did see that last season, so it's great to see him continuing that, showing that he cares about her. And you know, he almost escapes. He knocks out Gretchen, but ultimately fails because of Otis. But it all led into Otis taking Sam, burying him alive, and Sam telling Luthor that Superman always comes back, because he does, which is a tease for Superman coming back later in the season, because there's no way they're not going to do Superman's revival by the end of the season. They're not going to end the season without that, because they started the season with the death of Superman, we're definitely going to see him come back. I have a feeling we're probably going to see him in the black suit like in the comics, so that'll be pretty awesome when that comes to fruition. Plus in the episode, just seeing Jordan and Jonathan face Lex Luthor was pretty awesome, showing Lex that they're not entirely scared of him. Not yet anyways. And I do like how he tries to tell them about his daughter and how his daughter was the only one that loved him and everyone else left him, and Jonathan turning around and saying,
"Kinda sounds like you're the problem."
Which is just such a cold line to say to this big super villain standing in front of you, that he's the problem. Really sends Luthor over the edge. And I love how we see Jordan wanting to take out Luthor like he wants revenge. This is a Superboy who is in the midst of being trained by his father, and then his father is going to be taken out. Really showing how dark this storyline's getting. And I do love how Lois knows that Luthor has something up his sleeve. Jordan is not ready for it, and it continues to show how Jordan underestimates Luthor throughout these first 2 episodes, which does a great job at showing where he's at. He's not at where Superman is yet. He still has a lot to learn, and I love how he has to live with that now. He's made mistakes. He's gone against Luthor, and it's not going to help him in the long run. But I love how it all led into Jordan finally hearing Sam, finally finding out where his grandpa is, and he's like, oh, it's not actually anything. But Lois making them realize that if she hurt his grandfather, he's going to die, and they got to go save him. So I love how they go in, they take out Gretchen, and Jordan freaking sends Otis flying, and I do not understand how that man is still alive. He got launched into a freaking wall of a container, and the dude still drove away. This guy, Otis, must be somehow superhuman as well, because how did he survive getting flung by Superboy? But I did love how they saved Sam in the end, and Gretchen and Otis even called Jordan Superboy. So it's great to hear him get that Superboy name. Now they just need to put him in a proper costume. But of course, the first episode had to lead into the death of Superman, with Superman really getting his ass beat, mustering all his strength to use one final heat vision for it to fail and get taken out. But the explosion was pretty cool, leading into that death of Superman, having Doomsday bring his body back, drop it in front of his family, and then fly off, which shows us Lois going over to his body, remembering her love for Clark. And this episode also did a really good job with the flashbacks, because they knew they were going to kill him off, so they just had to continue focusing on Lois and Clark through the ages, how they loved each other, the time Clark revealed his identity to Lois. And the funny part during this is that he talks about how he's never done it. They kind of threw that in there, that Superman's a virgin until he met Lois, which is just kind of funny. It felt so out of place, but it kind of also worked with the scene because of how awkward Clark was, and I thought it was a lot of fun. They even tied back to Luthor supplying Intergang with kryptonite weapons, going back to the Intergang stuff from last season. But then also we're just really showing how Lois and Clark loved each other. Like they were all setting us up throughout this entire episode with all these flashbacks. Superman was going to die, showing that Luthor is not just Superman's enemy. He is also Lois's enemy, because he comes to the Daily Planet in that flashback threatening her that he's going to take over the Daily Planet if she doesn't stop trying to report on the news. That puts him in prison. So I really like how they set that up, because he says that Lois is doing the real harm by sending him away, but which is kind of tying back to that Lex is on this crusade to protect the planet from aliens and seeing Superman as the threat. So it kind of ties all back in that him getting sent away is Lois helping the enemy. So it's really interesting to see how they kind of tied that into everything, because it's showing again that Luthor is also a Lois enemy. But then we get to the sad part where they're dying. It's really emotional to watch Jordan and Jonathan go and cry over their father, and then you see all the people in Smallville watching, seeing exactly what's going on, which I was like, well, shit, their identities are blown, except in episode 2 where Lana tries to convince everyone, being like, hey, they're just really good friends. It's like, no, that's not how that works. No one's gonna fall for that. And I really hope they lead more into that this season, where they don't fall for that, because you see a woman and 2 children and crying over a man, heartbroken. Where's Clark? He's nowhere to be seen. And Superman's right in front of them dying. It's kind of suspicious, don't you think? Most people are gonna put 2 and 2 together. And Doomsday really did bring Lex Superman's heart, which ties into the entire second episode, because that was the focus on that. But the first episode was great. It was great to see the death of Superman, how they set it up, and episode 2 was dealing with that trauma and how the family was going to deal with it going forward. Like Jordan's just trying to save his dad, bringing him to the fortress, bringing him to his grandmother, and I do like how they put him in that stasis pod, trying to keep him alive. He's dead. There's no way he's surviving without a heart. But again, Superman has come back. And he's gonna come back. Somehow he's gonna get a heart again, and I'm curious to see how they're gonna tie that into it, because they really heavily said that in this episode, if Superman can't get his heart back, he dead. We know Superman will return. It just means, how is he gonna return this time? Is he gonna regenerate a heart, or are they gonna maybe put some tech in him to bring his heart back? Or was the heart that Lex Luthor destroyed at the end of the episode really Superman's heart. So a lot of questions that are still, need to be raised. And also what could happen too is they could take Doomsday heart and shove it in Clark, and that could save him. But only time will tell. We still have the whole season ahead of us. It was great to see Lana also getting involved with the Luthor plot, where she wants to stop Luthor from taking over that hotel so that he's not in Smallville, but Lois tells her not to because he will 100% come after her, and then that'll put her and her family at risk, because Luthor is not someone you want to be messing with. And I do like how they set that up during this entire episode, and we'll keep going through it as we go through it, because then we go into the part where Jonathan is worried about Jordan. The kid without superpowers is worried about Jordan and his mom, because he doesn't think his mom will make it because of all this trauma that's being dealt with her. She still has surgeries to go through, and she's not fully finished with her cancer procedures. So he's scared for that. And he's also scared that he doesn't think that Jordan is ready to be a superhero like his dad, which is so true. He's still a rookie. He was just starting to get the hang of it in the last season, and we're still in that season pretty much, because there wasn't a time skip. It happened directly after. So Jordan's still got a lot to learn, and we learn that by this episode, where Jordan is continuing to look for that heart. And in the end, it's kind of Jordan's fault that the heart was destroyed. But we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the episode. Especially because Jordan straight up confronts Lex Luthor in the middle of a restaurant. This man directly grabs his dad's biggest villain and threatens his life. If he killed him right there and then, boom, he would have won, but that would have tarnished the Superboy name. It was really interesting to see what he did, because in the end, that is what made Lex Luthor realize that Lois, Jonathan, and Jordan, and Clark Kent are all part of the Superman family, and that Superman is Clark Kent. So really insane to see that, the biggest villain put that two and two together, and it's all because Jordan confronted him. And it was crazy. That was a big reveal, and I loved how they did that, because it just shows you how smart Lex Luthor is and how conniving he is, or how conniving he is, and how he's ready to pounce when he can. And I also really liked how we saw that Lois is writing the paper of the death of Superman, like in the comics. So awesome to see, which just led into the next big moment of the episode, where Lois is freaking out at Jordan for going after Lex and revealing who they all are. Their secret is jeopardized. And I feel like what's going to happen this season is that Superman's identity is going to get revealed to the public, where now they have to live in a world where people know their secret identity, which is a thing that has happened in the comics before. So interesting to see how they're tying that into the show. And I bet you any money by the time it comes out, if Lex Luthor gets beaten, he's going to reveal to the world that who Superman is, and it's going to be probably the big plot point at the end of the season, where they're like, hey, Superman is actually Clark Kent. Superboy is Jordan Kent. And they're going to play it like that. And it's going to be, instead of like everyone's fearful, it's going to be the world thanking them for their service, and just like good moments like that. At least that's what I kind of think is going to happen by the end of the season. However, going into the Lois freak out at Jordan, it was great to see her turn around and say,
"You're not ready yet. You are not your father. Not yet. Anyway."
Meaning that Lois knows that her son could be a hero like his dad. However, he's still so much to learn and so much to progress to get there, that he's not ready for it yet. And I think that's her way of, she's scared of losing her son, just like how she lost her husband, and she's not ready for that. I think this season's gonna have a lot of consequences for Jordan, but I'm hoping that he'll finally don the Superboy suit before the end of it. And, announce himself as Superboy as well, because he hasn't actually done that yet. As we continue through the episode, Lana is trying to deal with Luthor trying to get into their city. She doesn't want it. She's trying to find a way to stop it, but then Chuck walks in. One of the people who saw Lois crying over Superman. He had put two and two together because he had lost his wife. He knew how a spouse would react to their spouse dying in front of them. And he says he's not going to say anything because he respects Superman and he owes him so much. But that is definitely setting up more people realizing that and keeping the secret to themselves, because Smallville is there for Superman, they're there for the Kents, and they're definitely not going to be revealing the secret to anyone else. They'll know, but they won't reveal it. That's where it's going to come into Lex Luthor revealing it to everyone else. And I also like during this scene where Lois is talking to Lana, that Lois thinks Jordan's powers might have been the worst thing that happened to him, because she sees it as he's been using it for he's using his powers for fame and attention, because he never got that before, which I don't think is fully true. Yes, he did do that last season, but it's also him trying to find his place in the world. And I think she's just so hurt from what's going on and people realizing who they are, that she's scared about what's going to happen next. But I do love the plot points they're setting up. They're setting up Jordan becoming Superboy, Superman and their family's secret getting revealed to the world, Luthor going after the family. So many more intense things are coming, but it also kind of sets up that Jordan might be going down a dark path, because he hears Clark's heartbeat. Jonathan knows it's a trap. It's clearly a trap, but he goes anyways. But he's ready for the beatdown. Finds it, he gets blasted with that kryptonite, stands back up just like his father did last season, with this great moment of him being a hero just to get knocked back into the container. Takes out the guys, but then gets brought right back down by Lex Luthor with a high-pitched sound, with Lex Luthor being the superior villain. Jordan was not ready for this, but it's also setting up Jordan like kind of losing it, getting mad, letting his anger control him. And I think that's going to be a struggle this season as he tries to figure out what's right and wrong and deal with these two things. Plus, Jonathan got to have a little hero moment as well as he goes to investigate inside Lex Luthor's home, finding out about his daughter and seeing that he's been searching for her while Sarah keeps him busy at the diner. And I love how it kind of had Lana be the one to save Jonathan, which probably will now have Lana be in the crosshairs of Luthor because she went into his house. So really interesting to see how the other characters are going to get looped into this Luthor plot and what's really going to be going down. Something bad's going to happen to someone. But you know, that all leads into the end where Lex captures Jordan for a second there, shows him Superman's heart, and then crushes it in front of him, showing Jordan he failed. He wasn't ready to take on Luthor. He got ahead of himself, and these are the consequences of his actions. And I think the reason Luthor didn't kill him either is because Luthor wants to play with him. He wants to mess with him. I feel like he sees that darker side of Jordan and wants to control him.
But at the same time, you can see that Jonathan is also having that inner rage come out when he sees his brother broken on the ground. So just another thing for Lex Luthor to play with while he tries to manipulate the family,
so that he can go after the family and break them apart. Just like how Lois says, that's what they're trying to do. Luthor is trying to make the family break apart. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do, especially as Luthor is going to be buying a farm at the edge of town and creating a new headquarters, finding out that Sam Lane is the only one that can find Luthor's daughter, which means he's now going to be targeted again, but for different reasons. And I guess it's a good thing that Luthor didn't end up killing him and Jordan saved him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten his information he needed about his daughter. And it was great at the end of the episode to see that Clark left a message for his family and that he'll always be in the Fortress of Solitude as the holograms there. That's pretty cool. You know, we're not getting rid of him yet. Again, he's definitely coming back. But it's cool to see what they did to him. And I'm hoping that we'll see a little bit of Jordan training with his holographic father as he tries to control his powers and be more of a superhero, maybe. And again, getting a proper suit. That's all I want. But this episode really set up a lot of things to come. At the end, I was kind of questioning, like, where's John Henry Irons? This is so annoying. Until the next episode trailer played, and then we got to see him in it. But it definitely looks like he might die next episode. With Natalie there as well. You know, it's great that they're still here. I think a lot of stuff is about to come down for those characters as well, which is why I kind of have a feeling that this series might be going down the Reign of Superman storyline, where you have the death of Superman, and then the Reign of Superman picks up afterwards, where you have characters like the Eradicator, Steel, and Superboy coming out to be heroes, and then Cyborg Superman involved as well, which we do have Superboy. He's just not the clone of Lex Luthor like he is in the comics. We do have Steel. He is around. Maybe it might not be him. It might be Natalie that takes on that mantle instead if he ends up dying to Doomsday. And the only other character we don't have around right now is the Eradicator, but we did see the Eradicator in the first season. So there are things that could still be coming from this, and I'm really excited to see what they do with this final season. It's going to be great. It's kind of disappointing that it's almost over. Each season has been great. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I'm hoping the show ends on a good note rather than a bad note, like some of the other CW superhero shows. Let me know, what Easter eggs and references did you notice during this episode? What did you think of the first two? And is there anything you wish they did differently? Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my Marvel and DC breakdowns. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week when we watch another episode of Superman and Lois.